Well, I'm back, ladies and gentlemen, for another review, and one that I've been looking forward to, but not overhyping myself about this, and that is, of course, Ender's Game. And the reason I was excited for this one is twofold. First, I have read the first book in the Ender's series. What's that? I think the next one's Speaker of the Dead, and they did have a line kind of hinting towards that title, hinting towards that movie. Big definite, but we'll get into that in just a second. But so I have read it. It was actually a college assignment at the time. I took a science fiction as literature course, and I must give the professor props because almost everything I've read in that class I had never really heard of before, or maybe I've heard of but never read. And almost everything in that class that we read, I've now, over the years, have realized is a big thing. It has a huge amount of influence. I mean, this is a class I've read stuff like Neuromancer and such in. So, prompts to that professor. Sorry. Who actually suffered from cerebral palsy, I believe. So, yeah, interesting stuff. But yeah, so I have read the story, and that does, which I enjoyed. But it does, of course, take into consideration because it is hard for me to tell if people are getting as much of what's going on because you know the subplots and you know what the characters are supposed to be thinking in their heads, but at the same time, it's very obvious that there are changes, and I'll get into that. And if it's one of those things. If it's a movie. Well, okay, let me backtrack a little bit there when you're seeing a movie based on a book. There's one of two ways you can do that. Is you take the book and only take the broad strokes from the book and pretty much go and do your own thing. In which case, even people that read the book kind of understand that's what's going on, and they sit back and you rather quickly go, okay, this thing's going in its own way. You kind of psychologically go, I'm not that sure what's actually going to happen, so I'll treat this like it's just a movie that I don't know anything about. World War Z is a pretty good example of that, because that has almost nothing to do with the book. Jurassic Park, or Congo. Congo, another book that I've read and I've seen the movie. Congo as just the broadest strokes, so that you really do separate the two very easily. This one, though, does follow the book rather closely. In fact, more closer than I imagine it would have. But at the same time, it makes those changes. So for a reader of the book, it is harder. You have to balance that. It becomes like, well, are they following this aspect of this character? Or are they not? Is this character thinking this? Because I don't think that's what he was doing in the book. But here, I'm not sure if Ender's trying to sabotage the game. For those of you that read the book, you know what I'm talking about at the end. But the other reason I mentioned that I was excited about this is that I want you to think for a second. When was the last space opera movie you saw? What I mean by a space opera movie with fleets fighting each other. I'm not talking about an alien invasion movie where it's modern day and the aliens are coming down, because there's been several of them. You got Battle LA and such. Now I'm talking about straight up. We have ships, the enemy has ships, and we fight a war in space. Maybe you could point to Star Trek, but that's still a little bit more just like one-on-one ship fights, that's been Star Trek's mainstay. They don't do like full-scale wars. Deep Space Nine being an exception. Star Wars really for recently, but the thing about it, that's about it. And yet this is kind of the stereotype of the science fiction genre. Yet it really doesn't exist, especially in the modern sense. Like 80s, yeah. 90s, I hate to pull it out, but yeah, Wing Commander. I'm looking at my movie collection here too, and I'm looking at stuff that's like, what from recent is in there? Maybe you can make an argument for Chronicles of Riddick. Avatar, yeah, it's in the future, but it's not. doesn't really involve spaceships that much. You kind of get my point? If you like spaceships, this is the movie you've been waiting for. I'm that type of guy that loves, like, having fleets of stuff and there's just, a massive battles happening in space. So, yay! I was excited for that reason. This could have been almost any type of space opera thing, and I would have been happy for it. However, I made sure to keep myself in check, because this film has been gestating for a while. In fact, I think the ironic thing is, it's basically done as a Hunger Games cash-in. With the funny thing being that the book has existed before the Hunger Games were written. It had long been considered a classic before the Hunger Games was written. And yet it's now the movie, which I'm trying to remember when the Hunger Games, the book series, was released. Let me check Wikipedia real fast. Alright, real fast check on Wikipedia. Ender's Game came out, published in 1985, while... Again, this is Wikipedia. Hunger Games publication date is in September 2008. Over 20 years later. And they have been trying to get a Hunger Games made, I think, since the late 80s. Definitely in the 90s is when people were really trying to get it made. And it wasn't until... Ender's Game. I think I said Hunger Games there. It wasn't until the Hunger Games release and this kind of young adult, that weird teen group aging between 13 and 15, or 13 and 16. Actually, probably more like 12 and 16. That kind of weird age period, because you get older than that and you can... In some cultures, you basically are an adult. You're 16, you're 8, or you're 16, 17, you're so close. And then if you're 18 itself, well, congratulations, you can get drafted and fight in a real war. So, it's very... I know a lot of people are going in probably thinking this is just a weird Hunger Games knockoff. And I think in some degrees they have emphasized that aspect of Ender's Game, but it still keeps so much to the original story that it does work. I have been a little vague. If you're wondering what my actual genuine opinion of the movie is, I enjoyed it. I'm just having a little problem myself digesting how much I really enjoyed it, because it followed the book close enough that I have this weird mix of emotions based on stuff I like that they kept, stuff that seemed different, and me kind of picturing how I would have adapted it differently. Now, I will say this. Obviously, you adapt a book to the film. Film, for all of its great stuff it can do, is really bad at expansive storytelling. In almost every other media, you can get a lot more story and flush things out a lot more. Television, video games, and books take hours upon hours of you to do. Now, even a video game, if it takes you 8 hours to beat a game, it's considered a really short, worthless game. Movies, you got about basically 2 hours to get all your plot in, plus your action and stuff. So you always have to condense stuff, and you always have to cut out stuff. And I know I haven't talked about Orson Scott Card, and he's the 800-pound gorilla in the room here, and I will address him in a second. But there were some things that were cut out that I am glad that they cut out, that I would have cut out as well. Mainly, and this is a bit of a spoiler in the books, taking over the world through blogging. Now, don't get me wrong. I will give Mr. Card, credit for kind of foreseeing the anonymity of the internet before it really even existed, and possibly the power of blogging and such. But as much as we might want to talk about that, we also know very well its limitations. If you just try to be some person out there talking on the internet, like myself, as I'm doing right now. If you look at my view count, you can clearly see the limitations of blogging, podcasting, as I have here. Yeah, taking over the world through complete anonymity. No. One, you kind of know anonymity doesn't really exist on the internet. If anyone really wants to find you, they find you easily. And two, if you're not willing to put yourself out there, people aren't going to take you seriously. You can have I guess Mr. Carr did not predict trolls either on the internet. Apparently everyone was going to have very well thought out conversations and be like, oh yes, you make a good point. But yeah, a subplot in the book is and Ender's siblings, which are almost cut out entirely. The brother he would, of course, is one character that I would have pretty much done exactly what they did. They kept him. He's in one scene where he's clearly shown to be a complete asshole sociopath. And they just kept him as that, just to have, okay, because the relationship with his brother is important for the Ender character. And it gives him that inner turmoil of he is so afraid he's going to turn into his brother. You have his brother and his sister are the two extremes. She is the nicest person you can imagine. He is a violent sociopath. Ender's right in the middle, which is why in the future apparently there's overpopulation issues, and so you can only have two kids unless you get special permission. You can make a third, and Ender's parents were given a third because they could tell that the kids they were producing were super, super smart, but they needed some sort of balance between the two extremes that they had. So, hence they had Ender. But the brother's plot is he eventually winds up kind of getting into a position of what they call hegemon, basically the leader of the world through blogging, and he goes through this whole character thing, but it's very much a side plot handled in a few chapters. It's a side plot, and they got rid of it because you really didn't need it. The sister, she's in a couple of little scenes here or there. Actually, I think she's only in two now that I think about it. But it forced another important motivation. But they kind of cut out that whole stuff, and that would have really dragged the movie out. And I think to the modern audience, as much as it would seem relevant to today, would also fall flat on its face. It'd be like the old guy trying to be cool by showing off his smartphone and like doing something like, "Look at kid, I can take a selfie," and you're like, "Oh my god." Yeah. So really glad they cut that out. I would have. The other thing I would have cut out, and I'm surprised they didn't, is the kind of the setup for the sequel. And I guarantee you this is why it was kept in, because it sets up for a franchise. But the whole plot with the game, the Giants game, they kept that in there pretty in a way that I would have not imagined. They did a really good job. I would have not have been that direct, but I'm surprised by it. It works narratively in this story. I would guarantee you this is one of those points where I understand a lot more that's going on with the whole game stuff than people that didn't read the book. This might be, again, I am someone that read the book, so I do understand it. But for those that didn't, the whole thing, which was originally, or the Giants game, which was originally a game program that they designed to help subtly do psychoanalysis on Ender. But because it interacts with his mind, and basically the aliens are trying to communicate to his mind too, it gets all twisted and goes on this crazy path that eventually leads to set up for the sequel novel, where he finds the last egg of the aliens. I would have kind of been tempted to just keep that stuff saved until, again, a sequel. and this kept it tight. In fact, the last chapter of Ender's Game was added afterwards, after it was becoming popular, and they wanted to make a franchise out of it. So Mr. Card went back and added a element that would give him a hook in for a sequel. He basically George Lucas before George Lucas did the George Lucas to the Star Wars films. But they did keep at least the manipulation aspect in this film. Really the whole thing with Ender's Game is it is this massive mind game that everyone is playing on Ender. That basically the government is. That they are so manipulating him, and it really is kind of hard to do in film. Because when you have characters that can sit and you can get into characters' heads like you can in a book, to understand their manipulations, understand they're watching him 24/7, to understand when they do the little subtle stuff that isolates Ender in order to like bring him out, in order to basically play off all the other kids against him. Comes out surprisingly well in this, but it's still nothing matches the massive amount of manipulation and the way they were fucking with Ender in this game. Like they show some of the stuff, like how when he's going up to the school, the space station, Graf comes out and basically, makes a joke that Ender points out, and he goes, and of course he sets that up as a moment to isolate Ender by agreeing with him and then pointing out to all the other kids that there's only one smart kid on this entire one, and it's him, signaling out that he's special because he knows children are douchebags. And the original book definitely makes that as a point. Children are douchebags. And so they isolate him through that. They throw him in groups that he will clash with. They set him up so that whenever he's starting to do well, they move him around to another position. Or they turn everyone against him, and then they give him commands so everyone really doesn't like him. Stuff like that. And then, of course, the ultimate manipulation. This is where we're getting into major spoilers and slight differences in the book, because I wasn't sure how they were going to do this. In the book, the real huge twist is they eventually take him to the command school when they begin running him on tests, simulations. And in the command school, in the book, of course, they kind of mention that it's very wireframe almost models, I think, if I remember. They're representations. And of course, in the movie, they want to make it more cinematic, but they're keeping this twist that they basically tell him, okay, we're going to simulate how this war will go, because if you can do this, then we'll put you in charge of the real thing. And so he goes through these series of really intense combat simulations that simulate the real forces that he would have. And eventually he kind of gets tired of it, and he decides he's going to kind of self-sabotage his own game by being this completely ruthless guy in this final match. He's had enough of all this stuff, and the pressure's been building on him so much that he figures the only way to really get out of this situation, because it is almost like they are in a total war type setting, so the amount of government control and stuff they can mess with his family. So he kind of goes, they didn't want my older brother Peter because he was kind of sociopathic, too violent. He kind of just comes up with the idea, maybe even this final battle, I become a completely, dogs barking in the background, I apologize, ruthless guy that just gets the job done. So it's very so he tries to do this manipulation where I'm not going to fail the test. I'm going to do what they want me to do, but I'm going to do it in such a way that hopefully they think I'll just be the wrong guy. A person that is this kind of uses the troops and the ships and the men that he has willy-nilly to just do self-sacrifices, and then attacks in such a ferocious way against the enemy that they're just almost genocidal in his methodology. Hey, puppy. What are you doing? Sorry, dog came into the room. Sorry, where was I? Oh yeah, so he does that. He basically he uses people as human shield. He uses people as human shields, and this goes genocidal on the aliens in the last game, in the last simulation. Of course, achieving victory in the match, but then he turns around and he realizes all the people watching him, the command staff, are in this like huge celebratory mood, and it's revealed to him that this entire time that he's been at this command school, that they had been lying to him, that he wasn't doing simulations from the get-go. He had actually been controlling real troops, or real ships, and real fleets, and real people who were dying as a result of his actions. Because basically the command staff had realized, you can't tell him, but if he thinks it's a game, he'll play it. They figured a way around his psychology. And this became devastating for him. Passes out. And this one they do the same thing. They still maintain that, where they do tell him it's a game. Of course, they like give this simulation, but they make it much more real. There's some other minor changes. In the original Ender's game, they do take a lot more of physics and relativity into play. In fact, the reason they have the one character in this one played by oh God, what's his name? Gandhi. No, Ben Kingsley. Mazer Rackham is, he should be dead by all accounts, but they keep him alive because they just basically shoot him out around Pluto and call him back in time for the invasion. And thanks to relativity, he pretty much has only aged like a couple of years. And the reason why they have to do this attack now, because in this one they actually go very close to the aliens' home planet, is their forward command base. In the book, it was like, I think Neptune or something. There was like a moon outside Neptune was the forward command base, and they were basically hitting all the colonies at once. They had timed it was every time they built a ship, they launched it out at basically light speed, but the way it worked out is the older ships went straight for the alien homeworld, and newer ships went for all the colonies. So that by the time everything worked out, they all hit almost at the exact same time. Here they have faster light travel. They travel like almost there. They go. Sorry if I repeat myself. I got called aside for a second. Had to pause the recording. They do that, and you kind of wonder the technology thing. Of course, it was much more well thought out in the book. The book could take its time with this stuff. Another change though they made that I do agree with though was upping the age of Ender. I think in the book he was really young in the book. I'm trying to remember if he was 6. It's between the ages of 10 and 6. Here again they upped him a couple of years, so that he is actually. I got the Wikipedia page open in the background somewhere. Does it say his age here? Alright, I don't want to read through the whole article here, but yeah, he's older, and I think it's more appropriate. They gave him the right age to be in his position. The other thing they though did not keep, and it looks like they did kind of whitewash, was in the beginning of the movie he gets into a fight. And it doesn't directly imply that he killed the kid in there. He just say he like really, really messed him up. And then later on at Battle School, he also gets into a fight. And in the book, it's revealed that he killed the kids involved both times. And the government, of course, the colonels and stuff in charge know this and have covered it up, kept it secret because they find him too valuable, and they know that if he was ever knew that he killed somebody, he would clam up, he would freeze up, he would retreat back from that. He had a moral center, and if he crossed that line, it would devastate him to the point he would never cross that again. So they kept it from him. Here, it's when you see that first fight, you can kind of see he doesn't hurt. I mean, he messes the kid up, but it's kind of clear he probably didn't kill him. He's not shown to be passed out and bleeding or something, which would lead us to kind of go, oh, he killed him. And then when he gets into the fight with Bonzo, who I always thought it was somebody else he got to. I guess I'm remembering it wrong. It's implied that is put into a coma. When in the book they make it much more clear that, oh no, you got into a fight with him, but he was just you injured him and we sent him back down to Earth. And it isn't until later till you're back into Graph's head in the novel that he reveals that, as they're flying out, he's got Ender in the body of Bonzo, who we were told was alive but messed up. Now he's in there, and this is the second time I've had to do this with Ender. Oh. And throughout the books, I'm not sure about the sequel, but at least throughout the book, Ender is never made aware that he killed those two. They don't do that here. They basically imply Bonzo is just in a coma. They basically say he's in a coma. It still stresses out Ender and all that stuff. I keep calling him Bender. And I think if I would have preferred them to keep the fact that, yeah, he did kill those two kids. Now, granted, it is handled well in the book. That I guess it would be harder to have to go into that psychology that you understand in the book. He did the extreme reactions at his mind, but he has this moral center that if he ever found out he killed, he's a good kid. It would destroy him mentally if he found out that he was really a killer. Even though both times it was in self-defense. As for other stuff, the battle school scenes were cool, but they cut out so much of... I think there was only really 2 matches you saw when they're in the battle school and they're kind of jumping around in this arena, which is really the core of the book, is these matches. And you go through many, many of these in the book, and there's this whole real big build-up to these, how they fight, and you basically just get the 2, and I think they kind of combine some elements of the 2. I mean, they kind of really cut out him going through the ranks and slowly being put in charge of a platoon, which they call a tune, and larger functions, how he kind of starts developing tactics and such. So I think you miss out a lot on that. Because in here they kind of have him have a match, and then they eventually give him his own army. Or his own team, basically. And you don't see him build up with that team. Like, then there's... Once he gets his own team, they show this whole build up with that. So... you miss out a lot of what is really the core of the story, is those games and going through this mind of a strategist. Now, granted, part of that is, I think, because in the books, we keep on being told he's some sort of military strategic savant. But if you've studied military history at all, he's kind of just doing really basic stuff, and you're like, what, that's supposed to be revolutionary? Oh my god, he figured out how to flank. No one in history's thought of that before. Of course, that's the hard thing of writing about someone that's coming up with revolutionary new military strategies. To actually write that, you'd have to come up with revolutionary new military strategies that would not have already been thought of. And if you try to think of something too radical, it turns out it's really stupid. Which, granted, he didn't do in the novel, but then you come up with the other bad side. Well, then he's not a savant. He's just doing basic stuff that you can get anyone that reads a couple of strategy books to do the same thing. I could go on and on. I'll probably real quick. I'll run up. I enjoyed our main actor. What's his name? Uh, Asha Butterfield. He did a good enough job of kind of being. I mean, he didn't see overly amount of emotion, but Ender's really a hard character to do. He's a very internal character. He's a character that's purposefully isolated and is just fucked around by everybody. So you do. Let's see, what else is he going to be in? Seeing what else he's working in. X plus Y, The White Circus. Whatever. So it's a tough role to do, but I think I liked him though. He did a good enough job. Let's see, who else did they do? Oh, of course, Harrison Ford. I loved Harrison Ford. He did not do the. He didn't sleepwalk through this role like it looked like he was going to. I don't know. Maybe some people will disagree with that, but I don't think he slept. He didn't like this walk through it. He did a good enough job. He did a good job in this, and of course, it's great to see Harrison Ford back in science fiction. Ben Kingsley, great in his scenes. He really got into his character. Really loved his performance in here. The only downside is most of the other characters really they don't have much time for an introduction. Besides background people, maybe Dap because he keeps on showing up, but then again, he really pretty much just does exactly what he did in the book. Of course, played by Nonzo and Anazone. I can never pronounce this guy's name. Anozi. If you don't know who that is, it's okay. Once you see the guy and you hear his voice, you'll be like, he's that guy. If you watch Game of Thrones, it's Daxos. It's Daxos from Game of Thrones. He's got a very unique British voice. Let's see, anyone else really big? The problem with, like I said, most of the other characters, especially characters such as Ali, Bean, those guys, they had no moment to really establish themselves. You did not get the sense of character that you got in the book, so they're just there. They probably really should have condensed pretty much everybody, all those guys, down into two. Petra, who we get a little bit of insight into. She gets a little bit more characterization. And then, of course, I don't know, one of the others you could have just picked at random. They really should have stuck with those two as being his friends. And even Petra, who in the books we get a lot of time with them talking, still doesn't get enough screen time to get any real establishment. So we do have a lot of characters, no characterization issues. Hell, even Valentine barely get to know her, but then again, she almost serves as just a motivational plot point for Ender. Is there anything else to really talk about? Special effects were okay, I guess. I enjoyed them. Battle scenes were good. Again, they had to really shorten it, because like I said, in the book, it's clearly an entire campaign he fights through multiple solar systems, and they really do a very good job of explaining it in a realistic manner. They also have an interesting thing. In the books, Earth was invaded twice, which makes it a lot more. It makes much more sense why we're attacking. Here, you do get the sense that Earth is just kind of being just douchebags to this. In the book, you get a much better sense of why humanity's like, no, we have to fight and take these guys out, because in the book, Earth was attacked once. They fought it off. And then, of course, they developed some space technology from that, because the first was this like really minor incursion, but still kind of devastating. Second one was the bigger alien fleet arriving with the Queen, and that's where you get Razor Mackham doing his thing, which he still didn't do much. It still really was. You get in the books, it's revealed that really the alien race did not realize that humanity was on Earth. and their first fleet was really just kind of probes that were supposed to prep for the colonization fleet. And when the colonization fleet arrived and realized, oh crap, there is an entire civilization here, they kind of allowed the humans to wipe out that fleet, and then they also quickly realized, we not only attacked them once, we attacked them twice. They are completely justified now in coming after us, mainly because to them, we established that we're gonna just keep on attacking them. It's kind of weird. The aliens kind of, one of the a very good aspect there with the aliens get that humanity isn't necessary, even though they misunderstood, humanity's not in the wrong for going after them, because the aliens go, the aliens kind of go, we attacked them twice. The only logical conclusion they can come from that is that they'll probably be attacked a third time, and so of course they're going to come after us, and we can't blame them. So the aliens had this very weird little thing there. Yet it's a nice little thing that kind of even out humanity. Here there's a lot more like, maybe humanity's just being overly aggressive. Oh, we gotta respond in kind type of a deal. Not so here. Now I've kind of been avoiding it. I'm getting to the end of the review. So anyone that's been, I know we're going almost 40 minutes now. Orson Scott Card, I don't agree with his politics. Really over the years, especially at some point in the 90s, he went really deep into his religious aspects. Hints of that already existed in Ender's Game when they talk about, he kind of goes a little bit into like tensions between Catholics and the Mormons, which it's kind of funny now because it's like Catholics and the Mormons, they produce a lot. You know, they're going to have tons of kids, and you know, with demographics, you've seen that's not really been the case. It's happened. Yeah, I'm Catholic, and we don't have too many. You know, everyone basically has one or two kids, if they have kids. But you can kind of see he was bringing in that religious aspect back then. And I do try to separate it because, you know, I look at the book as purely what it was. It's quite clear that he wrote it when he was a different man, so I do detach it a bit. That's kind of why I don't want to maybe go into some of the later books, as he really got full of himself. But considering the money that he's probably going to get from this series, I can understand if you don't want to see it for that political reason, because we have this weird little dilemma where you can kind of go, well, you shouldn't just not judge a movie. You should see the movie so you can know whether to support it or not. However, by seeing the movie, you're giving money to that cause. You're giving, Orson Scott Card is receiving money, and when people see a movie, if enough people see it, regardless of whether they agree with it or not, it is interpreted as approval. So there's two contradictory things. Yes, you should see it in order to actually judge it. However, just by the act of seeing it, you're not only in some way financially supporting a cause, Oscar Scott Card will probably use it as a jumping point, but also giving validation to the arguments of the author and his causes. Even though, you know, those elements are not in this particular book, are really the movie that they really kind of think kept him at arm's length. They knew he was a pariah from the get-go, but of course, Scott Card is not dead. He is well and alive and very active, and you need his support for legal reasons to get the movie made. So I can understand people who don't want to see it because they know the author. And it'd be kind of like, I guess, imagine if, I hate to, this is kind of going with Godwin's law here, but I apologize. This is the best way to, best example I can think of. It's, imagine if Hitler is alive, and you like one of his paintings, and you want to buy them. because this is the only reason why I invoked the Hitler thing is because he was an artist and he did sell paintings. So knowing who he is, do you want to give him the money to have a nice picture of a flower? By itself, the picture, it's obviously not support. The picture itself isn't anti-Semitic or anything, but it's still, you're buying it from him. I don't mean to compare the two. I don't mean to compare the two causes, although I'm sure a few people would. I don't want to compare directly Nazism with what Orson Scott Card is, with of course being very, very anti-homosexual. I just use that example because he's the only person I can think of that most people would disagree with, yet has some sort of artistic thing that you would not want to buy directly from the guy. So I apologize for that. I apologize if I have gone to Godwin. It's just the easiest example to make right there. But yeah, if you're wondering why, if you're also completely confused by this conversation, Orson Scott Card, the author of Ender's Game, the book, has in later years become very, very anti-homosexual, extremely religious, Mormon religious. I don't know, I guess technically you can't count him as evangelical, but highly controversial, has gone out and done a lot of support and given a lot of money to organizations that want to limit gay rights and such, ban gay marriage, and really, when you read their rhetoric, go further, a whole lot further than that. So you can see where the controversy is, especially now that the momentum really is in the pro-gay marriage side of things. I don't want to get too much into politics. This is a movie review thing, but I did promise I wouldn't ignore the 800-pound gorilla. So I do not blame you if you are not seeing the film for that reason. However, I'll put it this way. If you see the film once it comes to TV or you rent it on Netflix, I would recommend you do it. Because guess what? By then, it's not really going to give that much of a difference at that point. Or it's not going to be a validation of the cause, and really the money that basically he's already got the money for the Netflix thing. So they already spent the money on him. He's got that no matter what. If you watch it more, I don't think he's really going to get more money. Or is it in such a significant amount compared to even movie tickets that you can kind of get away with it. So I do recommend it, especially if it's TV. Or, you know what? If you have a friend who bought it, see it over a friend's house. Therefore, there was no money from you going there. But because I do recommend you see it. And if you're going to disagree with something, you probably should see it. There should be like some sort of card you can pull. I've got 5 movies, 5 pieces of media that I highly disagree with, but I'm going to see. Like, you get it punched. No financial support to that. But I need to see it so I can say that, yes, I saw it but disagreed with it. I don't know. I've gone on really long on this one. I could probably go on even a lot longer. If you've liked my extremely long rant, watch some more. Check out my channel, like the channel, subscribe to the channel, share the channel, share this review and such. If you're one of my regular viewers and you're wondering what's going on with the core thing, I went to go see Ender's Game, so I did not see the episode tonight. I'll catch it tomorrow and post up a review, and I have seen the beginnings, part 1 and 2, and I will probably record a podcast of that and post it up right before I do that, or do the other core one. Next week is Thor. I'm really looking forward to that one, actually. So, ooh. Sorry about the sneeze there. It came out of nowhere. Anyway, so that's what's going to be coming up. A lot of good stuff coming out this November. So stay tuned for that. Signing off.